So Shubham, so shall we start? Okay, so I'll give an introduction. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So there are people let them join as we progress. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, hello everyone. Good evening to all. So welcome to our Cisco Thinkibator webinar. So we have today with us our guest Shubham. So Shubham Singhal, he is a practicing chartered accountant based in Noida. He has 1.5 years experience in post-qualification experience, and he has also worked along with many banks and financing businesses and assisted the business for formation of suitable entities. So so welcome Shubham. So we have some of our we have with us some of our Thinkibator participants and cohort teams, participants and all. So guys, welcome you all. So now I will over to you, Shubham. You can go ahead with your our webinar, that is how to make your startup viable. Over to you, Shubham.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. So my name is Shubham. I have already given my introduction, so I would skip that part and I would straight away go to the topic for today, which is how to make your startup viable. So I was approached by Kushal, and I was told that the major problem that we face with startups is that they don't last. They end up dissolving themselves very quickly. And so I wanted to address that issue. So when I say what makes a startup viable, so first I would like to comment on the topic profit versus funding. So traditionally, the startup used to work on a model where the person would think what will be the revenue, what would be their cost. And if in any case, suppose we are saying that I'll earn revenue of 10 lakhs, but my cost would be like 12 to 13 lakhs, then I would say my startup would be a loss making. So I would classify it as a non-viable startup and then not go ahead with the plan. But and so this scenario has been changed in the recent times. Now, where the startups are not focusing themselves on profit, but how to get themselves funded. So when I say get themselves funded, there can be two mediums of funding. That is through borrowings, and second is through other financing methods such as venture capital and private equity, which invest as owner. So I would like to point out that there are times where startups are making losses and the minds behind the startups are creating wealth. Which essentially means that even when the startups they are running into losses, they are getting funded by venture capitals and private equity. And what is essentially happening that the wealth of these people who have created the startup, it gets increased. And at some point, they even find it feasible to exit the startup and cash in on the value which has they gained through the startup. So as I mentioned, the funding sources are mainly venture capital firms and private equity. So these are the firms which are ready to invest in an idea, but they don't have the idea themselves. They don't know the technical feasibility of an idea. So that's why you people come in. You people present them idea, and if they find it feasible, they invest in it. And that's how the startups are growing these days. They do not rely on profits, but they rely on external funding. And another method is also buyout. So this is a very interesting notion. So what happens? Suppose I have a startup and there's another major competitor in the market, which may feel that when it acquires my startup, they will themselves gain certain, we call it synergy from it. Synergy is basically an advantage from acquisition of another entity. Hold on. Yeah. So buyouts is another method which has led to great success of startups in recent times. So I'll explain the buyouts by sharing this news clip. This is from 2018, where Swiggy acquires Foodsie. Now, to give you an overview, Foodsie was a food delivery app which operated only in the Mumbai region, while Swiggy was a food delivery app which operated pan-India. Now, definitely, Foodsie was some customers away from Swiggy, right? And so Swiggy felt threatened. They felt that maybe it can grow in future, or maybe Swiggy felt that if we acquire Foodsie, we can expand our operations in the Mumbai region as well. Even though they already had presence, but they knew that we can expand their market share basically. They acquired it for a 50 crore valuation. So even though we say that Foodsie as a startup it dissolved or it did not go further, but we have to also take into consideration that all the people who were involved in the startup, the managers basically, the people who started the startup, they gained immensely from the startup. And second example, in another food delivery industry, I would like to mention that in 2018 only, Food Panda acquired Cloud Kitchen in Gorakhpur. So what happened here? Like Food Panda is a food delivery app, right? Hold on. So Food Panda Food Panda acquired Cloud Kitchen because Food Panda acquired Cloud Kitchen Bhola Chef. So Cloud Kitchen is basically when you have a restaurant which does not have any physical presence, but it only caters to the deliveries. And so Food Panda wanted to expand its operations. Although the business of Bhola Chef and Food Panda were different, but they were somewhat related, right? So this is the vertical integration. So it's not only that your competitors will acquire you, but other industry participants which want to enter your domain, they can acquire you. So these are essentially buyouts. And like even if when we talk about successful startups, we give examples of Oyo, Uber, Ola, and other. These are the startups which have lasted. But we don't talk about other startups which have been acquired at hefty valuation, and the promoters of the startup they have benefited greatly from that startup. Also, I would like to bring about another point here. As you can read here, I don't know if my cursor is visible, but Ola Chef founders Saurabh Saxena and Anil are expected to join Food Panda's leadership team. What essentially happens when a buyout happens, the question may arise that what will the person do next? Suppose I have a startup and it is brought out by the other company. So what will I do next? Do I have to start with another startup or do I have to get a job? So to address that question, I would like to say that as this happened in the scenario, the managers are retained by the acquiring company. So it also eliminates the unemployment or unemployment eliminates the threat that the person will be sitting idle at the home or they don't have to bring up another idea. So what I'm saying that to start, when you think about viability of startup, those don't just look if it will earn profit or if we will be able to raise funds from a PE or a VC. You have to also look at if our startup is such that it can be acquired by other companies, right? So I'm just saying that when we talk about viability, do also take this into consideration. And acquisitions are a very common thing. Like these are the news articles I'm just sending out from a recent time. These all are acquisitions that have happened in recent times. And see, the point is that these acquisitions will keep happening and they are very common in today's scenario. So just because your startup is making loss or it is not able to get funding, don't just disregard it as a non-viable startup. You should know that it's a viable startup if it's challenging the market, if it is bringing something new into the market, or even if it is creating a threat to the existing participants. I would also like to bring your attention to the last news clip, that is Unacademy acquires threats preparation startup Coursera. So what essentially happened that Unacademy provide courses online and it was to provide test preparation, but it wanted to expand into the domain. So instead of starting from scratch, what these people do, they acquire other smaller startups which are doing the same business. So that's what I'm saying, that even if your startup is making losses, you should not just disregard it as non-viable because there always be other startups who will be ready to acquire your idea. And also, I was told by Prashant that many people that during recent trend it has been that the startup is made to leverage a better position for a job. Now, also that is a very understandable explanation because startup obviously carries its risk, and job is much more safer. But we also have to know that that in corporation the growth trajectory is very flat, and in startup the growth trajectory is definitely higher than the corporation. Like I have given a estimate that this is an estimated overview. Like when you start with a salary, it will be as good as 12, 13 lakh, and then over years it will go up to 40 lakh, even in 15 years. But when you start a startup, initially you may be earning zero, and even you may run into losses. But over time, what happens that as the profits grow and funding starts to come in, you will way ahead than you would be in salary. So my point being that don't just run to the salary portion because it will earn you more in the beginning, and also have a long-term view. Because see, if you have a startup, means you have an idea, and that is what the market is lacking today. That's why there are so many venture capitalists and private equity because they have funds, but they don't have the idea. And even if they have the ideas, they don't know the technical feasibility. That's where you people come in. You have the idea, and you know its technical feasibility, and you can implement it. And that's why, like, people. It's a first part. So if you stick with the starter, you know that people with similar ideology who have funds will always approach you. I wanted to talk about is how to make your startup viable. You know, my point is that just run by that your startup need to make profit and or the startup needs to be heavily funded so that it can be a viable option. You have to start your business. You have to have faith in your idea and don't abandon it. You have to be you have to have a long-term approach with your startup because if you're just having startup so that you can leverage a better job, the startup won't flourish. And honestly, you will invest time in the initial years where you will be making losses. And when the time will come that the startup would have started to grow, you would have jumped to the job. So always give due consideration to the fact that how much time you have invested, is the idea really feasible, and how can you sell the idea to other people. So the second part of my presentation would be entities. So uh, like I'll bring the so we have mainly four type of entities through which we can do business. The first is proprietorship, second is partnership firm, third is LLP, and fourth is company. The major problem which you people might be facing is to decide on which type of entity to form for your business. Now, each type of entity has its own advantages and disadvantages, and see, a right appropriate entity can actually boost your growth for the company, growth for your startup, and an inappropriate startup can inappropriate entity can hinder the growth. So I will talk about all these type of entities. So the first is sole proprietorship. So sole proprietorship is essentially when there's a single person who's carrying out the business, and that's about it. He's the sole owner. There won't be any other person who will be sharing the profit or anything else. So it's the simplest form of business. You don't have any regulations. You don't need to get registered, and there are no major compliances which have to be followed. However, the major drawback of sole proprietorship is unlimited liability. Now I'll explain what unlimited liability is. Suppose I have a business and the business starts running into losses. I have taken a loan for the business and I'm unable to pay the loan. Like I have to pay the loan from my own fund. That unlimited liability that the owner should be liable for the liabilities for the of the entity. Nil to negligible compliances. So as I already mentioned, sole proprietorship has very low compliances. We don't anywhere in one of the sole proprietors there are no such any regulations. The only regulation is you have to pay your taxes and maintain the accounts, and maintain the accounts only after you reach a certain level of turnover. If you are a small sole proprietorship, you don't even have to prepare your accounts, although that is recommended that you should prepare accounts. Another major problem with sole proprietorship is that it is difficult to finance. Like if I have a sole proprietorship and I approach bank for the loan, so the banks won't have much trust in my sole proprietorship. The reason being that I can easily manipulate my accounts. I can show a rosy picture when my proprietorship is running into losses. And so the financier won't have confidence in my the entity. So it is difficult to finance. And when I talk about funding, I mean having ownership, like venture capital or private equity. So they did not finance sole proprietorship. They won't ever, because sole proprietorship is a single owner and they cannot have more than one owner. And private equity and venture capitalists, they usually want the ownership in the entity. So sole proprietorship cannot be funded. So that's the biggest drawback of the sole proprietorship. And there is no distinction between owner and management. So the person who would be the owner would be responsible for the management of the company, of the entity. I'll explain this point in detail when we come to private limited companies. As I mentioned, easy to form and easy to dissolve. So that's sole proprietorship. When we come to partnership, partnership is formed by two or more people, and yes, the compliances are more. So when I enter a partnership with other person, I usually have to form a partnership deed where we'll decide how much funds we'll bring into the firm, what will be the profit sharing ratio, and in case we have to close down our partnership firm, what will be the terms and conditions of the dissolution. As in sole proprietorship, there would be unlimited liability. If the partnership firm is unable to pay its dues, the partners are personally liable to pay those dues. The compliance is only registration. You have to get your partnership deed registered at the respective state, and the partnership deed will form, which is a very minimal compliance. But we should have that compliance because if we are having an unregistered partnership, it cannot sue anybody. So, like if I have an unregistered partnership, me and a friend of mine, we have a partnership and we have not registered it, and we have to sue someone because they gave us bad quality of product or something like that. We cannot do that because we are not a registered partnership, and that's why we always recommend that we should register a partnership. So partnerships are comparatively easier to finance. If I approach a bank and I have a sole proprietorship, the bank won't be very willing to give the loan or the finance my business. But when I approach as a partnership firm, it would be easier because partnership firms are usually easy to expand because we can add partners, we can expand our business. But as I mentioned, difficult to fund because private equity and venture capitalists, they will always prefer to finance companies. And I'll come to that point when we get to the private limited companies. Again, there's no distinction between the owner and the management. The person who is the owner, that person will be responsible for the management of the company. If there is any fraud or anything that happens in the partnership firm, the owner cannot say that I was not managing the partnership firm, so I won't be responsible. He would be responsible because in partnership firm, owner and management are the same person. And when it comes to dissolution, the only thing that you have to dissolve the partnership, you have to form another agreement to dissolve the partnership deed, and that's about it. So when I talk about compliances, partnership firm has just slightly more compliance than sole proprietorship, but still not very high level of compliance. Now, when we come to limited liability partnership, it is very much same as partnership. The major difference is that the partners have limited liability. And as I mentioned, limited liability would be that if a partnership has not been able to pay its dues, they cannot recover dues from me because I was the partner. Because if it's a LLP, the partners have limited liability, and that's where the name comes from. So it requires two or more designated partners because it is partnership, so you would need two or more people. Limited liability. So the compliance. So the compliance level is moderate. So if you know, there is Ministry of Corporate Affairs (MCA). It regulates companies and limited liabilities partnership. So they have to file their annual accounts and certain statements with the ROC MCA, sorry, to MCA at each year. But that is only when you have reached a certain level of turnover or capital. So yes, there are compliances which are more than normal partnership firms. It is easier in financing because see, if I approach a bank, they would have more trust on an LLP because I'm filing my account, so they can easily get those accounts from the MCA portal. So they can ensure that the accounts are not being manipulated. But however, still funding is difficult because in LLP, there's no distinction between owner and management. So if someone is investing in the business, they would be responsible for the management as well. So usually private equity and venture capital firms, they would also not invest in an LLP. And registration of an LLP and dissolution, it's a lengthy process. So the entire form has to be filled and various procedures have to be followed to get it registered. And even in case of dissolution, like various fees is paid to MCA and other compliances. So it is not recommended if you've just started a business that you should form an LLP. Because you just started a business, first you should get into it for a month or two, and then have an idea if it is feasible to carry on the business. And if it is feasible, then these compliances might be worth taking. And the last and the most common form of entity is a private limited company. So private limited company, the management is held by the directors, and we require minimum 2 directors for a private limited company. The best part is the limited liability. If the company is unable to pay its dues, the directors or the shareholders, they cannot be held personally responsible. The compliances are highest in form of private limited company. Even if you haven't made any revenue or earned any profit, or even you have not carried out any business during the year, there are still various forms you have to file annually with the MCA portal. The biggest advantage private limited company has over LLP is that it is very easy to fund because it creates a distinction between owner and management. So the management is the board of directors, and those are the people that are managing day-to-day operations of the company. There is another class of owners, that is shareholders. These are the people who have invested their money in the company, and so they don't have to be involved in the management. And that's why when suppose I'm a private equity and want to invest in your business, I know you are running business well, and I don't want to get myself involved in the management because I know you are running the business well. That's why I'm investing in it. So I'll just stay back and I'll just invest in the shares that I'll be the owner, but I won't be part of management, which is not possible in the other 3 forms of entity. So that's why private limited company is easiest to fund by venture capitalists and equity. And yes, registration and dissolution is a very lengthy and complicated process, and it has like LLP only. And you should not rush into making a company. If you feel that your business is viable and you have the intent to carrying on the business, then only a private limited company should be formed. Because if you form a company and you are not carrying a business and you don't it has happened many times that people form a company because they want to start a business. The business run into losses, they abandon the business, but they don't close down the company because of the compliance process involved. Then they get penalized by the MCA because you have to file the annual statements, even if you are not making any profit or revenue. So that covers a major portion of. So this is the summary of the entity. So can we have a rapid fire round? So I'll ask questions and you can reply me in the chat box. Like what would be the appropriate entity for the given situation? So the situation is that me and a friend of mine have decided to start a business, but we don't want that in case the business is unable to run it, unable to make profit, we would be held personally responsible. Also, we want to minimize the compliance. So what would be the type of entity that we would be forming? Anyone? For Ritika, it's not partnership because, as I mentioned, I don't want that if the entity is unable to pay off its dues, they should not be able to recover it from me. But yeah, thank you for replying. Anyone else who wants to try? Yeah, so I think I'll just skip the Q&A session, and the answer would be LLP because, as I mentioned, I want the limited liability. So my two options are company and LLP. And I also mentioned that I want to minimize my compliance as the compliances are more in companies. So I would prefer LLP. So Neeraj is asking private limited minimum two directors are required. Yes, sir. In private limited companies, minimum two directors are required, and maximum there can be seven. So sorry, there is no limit on maximum. In public company, the minimum seven are required, but in private limited, minimum two directors are required. There's also another entity that is not very much like I won't recommend it to anyone. That is one person company. So one person company where only one director can form a company. But then again, when only one person is involved, so it's not very advisable to form a company. So yes, private limited two directors are required. If you have only one director, you can opt for one person company, but I won't recommend that. Yeah, so here's the summary. If you have any questions regarding the type of entities, you can message me right now or later at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A. So I wanted to mention the biggest advantage of the private limited is the distinction between ownership and management. And that is the reason companies are so popular because it's not every time that the person would want, the owner would want to be involved in the management. And that's why the listing is only allowed for companies. Like if I want to invest in a company and I don't want that should be well versed with the day-to-day operations. I just want to be part of the profits. So I'll prefer private limited company or any type of company because this distinction essentially creates that yes, I don't have to participate in everyday operations. I don't have to understand the business and I can just participate in the profits. Also, another point regarding limited liability is that if the firm is involved, like the entity is involved in corrupt practices or outright fraud, in that case, the management can be held personally liable. So if I have an LLP and I carry out tax frauds or GST fraud, something like that, then I would be held personally responsible for those liabilities. But in case of private limited companies, the owner cannot still be held responsible because owner and management are different. The fraud was committed by management. The owner was not involved in it. So owner won't be held personally responsible, but yes, management can be held personally responsible for all the fraudulent activities. That's about it. And I will come to the next topic, that is importance of accounting and budgeting. So this is my personal opinion. Like personally, I feel that many startups they just focus on running their operations and they're not very much focused on maintaining their accounts. We'll talk about budgeting later. And startups are usually not focused towards maintaining accounts because accounting is not compulsory anywhere. If you have low turnover, like if you have turnover of 10-20 lakhs, there is no regulation that would require you to prepare your account except if you are a company. So many times accounting is the aspect that is ignored by the management. But as a chartered accountant, I would like to explain the importance of accounting. So when I say accounting, accounting is knowing what is happening. So when you prepare your accounts and you have a look at the idea that from where the revenue is coming, how are the expenses, occurring, how much profit are you making, and how it has changed over the years. So if you don't have these insights about your company or sorry, your entity, so the biggest drawback you have when you don't prepare accounts is that no one would fund you. See, if I want to fund a company, I would want to know what are its profits, how much revenue it is making, what are its major costs. And if the entity is not preparing accounts, there is no way for me to know that actual figures. So if you're not preparing accounts, the person funding your business won't have confidence in you, and they may decide against funding it. And budgeting is preparing accounts for future years, basically estimating what will happen, like what is the sales I'll make in the future, or what will be the expenses that I will incur. So I'll show you the rough statements of these, so you will get a better idea. And as I mentioned, these are absolutely essential for any type of funding. So I have, as was mentioned, I have worked with banks. So when a firm or a company approaches bank for funding, so what we ask is to give us prior year accounts, how much profit you have earned, and also give us a budget whether you will be able to earn profit or not. Like what is the budget if you are expecting a growth? How are you thinking that this growth will happen, and what will the quantum of the growth? So for that, budgeting is very important, and you cannot have a budget without preparing your account. So I'll show you how accounts are prepared. Any management decision you have to make, like if you want to cut your costs, if you want to expand. So like if you have a revenue stream from 2 to 3 businesses and you want to invest capital, so you would want to know which of the businesses earning most of the profit. If you just classify it as revenue, you won't know where the revenue is coming from. You need to know if revenue is coming from a service or your good and how much it has grown. So for making any type of management decision, it is very important that accounts should be maintained. And even understand that if certain type of business is making loss or is it making profit, is it burning cash, is it creating cash? For everything, like any type of management decision you want to make, accounting is very much essential, because if you don't have the accounts, you don't know what is happening, what has happened during the years, and your management will be intuitive, which is obviously not recommended. The management should be based on facts, not on intuitions. Budgeting is when we set benchmarks, like in 2 to 3 years, I will achieve this much sale. So let me give you an example. Suppose I'm working without a budget. Last year, I achieved sales of 6 lakhs. Sorry. Last year, I achieved a sales of 6 lakhs, and I'm not preparing any budget, and next year I achieved the sale of rupees 8 lakh. So I would be happy with my performance. Let's say 25% growth. 33% growth, and I would be happy with my performance. But yes, I performed well. But let's think of the other scenario where I would be preparing budget. I know that the market would be favorable for me. I've invested capital, so I set the benchmark at 9 lakh, and I'm able to earn revenue of rupees 8 lakh only. Then I know that I have not been able to meet the expectations which I could have. And then I would know that I would classify that where the revenue went wrong, what happened, were my prices not appropriate, were my sales like my could be the quantity was not distributed well. Like even if the prices were good, the quantity sold was not good. So then I can work on that issue. So for any type of management decision, you need to have, for benchmarking, you need to have budget so that you can compare against a benchmark. So, so accounting can be a complicated process, but to simplify it, what you can simply do, you can take note of your transactions and see what is being affected by it. So when we say accounts, we divide accounts into 5 parts: capital, assets, liabilities, income, and expense. Capital is the portion of the owner's fund, basically the amount the owner has invested in the company, the entity. Liability is the amount which we have to pay to the outsiders. It can be as taxes which we have to pay to the government, or we have taken some goods on credit and we have to pay that amount. Asset is anything that will give us benefit in the future. So asset can range from plant and machinery which we have acquired for production, or the inventory we have in stock, cash we have in stock, investments we have made. Income is the inflow of revenue, like from where we are having sales. It can be interest which we have earned from the banks or our investments. And expenses are amount we incur for running the operations. These can be the salary expense, the running expenses of the offices, and depreciation and effects. So even if you classify your transactions as these in these five criteria, you can have a basic idea that how much your startup is earning and is it even a financially feasible startup. And from these, we prepare three statements: these are income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. But cash flow statement is only prepared when the revenue or the good amount of revenue is there. I'll show you the structure of income statement and balance sheet in the next slide. Budgeting is when we, as I already mentioned, it requires to present the future outlook. What we will earn in the future? What will be the future position of the entity? And we have to present it in form of statement. It is obviously at the discretion of management to decide the figures, but the main point is that the figures should not be executed. I cannot say that in the first year I'll be earning 10 lakh of sales, in second year 12 lakh, and in third year the sale will jump to 40 lakh, because that's not feasible. The assumption should be very much reasonable, because if we are not making reasonable assumptions, so the other person won't rely on that budgeting. If someone presents to me and they say that their revenue will increase by 4 times in 2 years, I won't believe them. I would clearly straight away decline the financing. And honestly, anyone would. Because if you cannot place confidence in the budget, you cannot place confidence in the company or the any type of entity for that matter. And that's why while preparing the budget, the assumptions which you are taking, the growth assumptions, the capital investment assumption, they should be reasonable. They should not be over and above the capacity. In two parts, assets and liability. Balance sheet basically presents a position at a particular date. So here, if we go step by step, first we have property, plant and equipment. This is basically a machinery which we have. And usually, this is a good practice that we should always include comparable of the last year so we can know how much we have grown. So we can see our investment in machinery has increased, which could indicate that we are expanding our capacity. Our investments, which can be as simple as bank FD, and they have grown, which means that we are producing excess cash we have made, but the amount we have not received. And cash and equivalents is very much obvious. Then come to the liability side. Capital is the which is earned by the entity. It straight away goes to the capital because it belongs to the owner. Or salary which are due. You have noticed, but the balance sheet comes from the words that the assets and liabilities always balance out each other. So assets and liabilities should be equal, and it makes sense because all the assets for the external liabilities. Now we come to income statement. So income statement is how much income and expenses we have incurred, which have occurred during the year. And also, as in case of balance sheet, if the revenue has grown or it has declined. So like in this scenario, you can see total income that which is in normal practice, yes, the expenses can be fixed or variable. And but to say that an expense would be strictly fixed, that it won't change as the capacity expense would be wrong, because even if as your operating more people, and so the salary expense would increase. So generally, when the operations are increasing, our revenue. If that is happening, then only your entity would be able to make profit. Exhaustive list of expenses. These are the expenses. Total income, we deduct expenses from income. We have profit before taxes. We calculate tax on these profits. I've calculated them at 30%. And then we have net profit for the year. So we can see that our net profit has increased over the year. But as an indication for us, yes, the business we have carried on, it has increased profits. Yes, we have done better than the last year. So what I have starting from April 21, and revenue will increase over the months. So as you can see, I have like at any point similar as the income, sharing it for multiple periods for every month. And in the end, there's the financial for the entire prepared, and that's how accounts are prepared. So these are actually very high. I hope it's fine now. Yeah, so if there's problem, do let me know. So that is what budget is. The expenses it will incur in the and how much profit it will earn. So the person who is investing, he can get an idea. Yes, I'm investing for the future and what the future holds for the entity. Startup viable. I just wanted to say that to make a startup viable, first of all, have faith in your startup to leverage it for a better job opportunity, and all keep in mind what are the requirements of the startup. As I mentioned, a good structure can boost your growth, a bad structure can hinder your growth, and always keep an idea of what is going on in your business by preparing the. So I'll open for question and answers if you have it to the chat. You should have faith in your startup because know that there are always competition ready to buy out your startup, which will buy at exuberant values, and that all the profit will be yours to keep. And don't just leverage it for a better job position because in job the growth won't be as much as it would be in the startup. Always form a good, like always note that what type of entity should be formed for the business because as I already mentioned, the yes, so as I already mentioned, a good entity, a good structured entity can boost your growth and a inappropriate structure can hinder your growth. And third is you should always have your accounts prepared because if you have your accounts prepared, you can know what is going around in the business, and then you can work on it, like what are the deficiencies, how to work on it, etc. Yeah, so
So Shubham, these are some a few questions like student had asked while filling up the form.
yeah.
So they want to know like how to manage a proper cash flow. I think you have explained that using that balance sheet and all. But you have to add something more on that.
Yeah, definitely. So when you say how to manage proper cash flow, so if the person who asked the question can explain it, it's good. Otherwise, as per my understanding, you are asking that how can we manage the cash flow, like what the cash flow is coming and how it is going. So we prepare a cash flow statement for that. It has three parts. We divide cash flow from operations, cash flow from investments, and cash flow from financing. So cash flow from operations is as the name suggests, it is the cash which is earned from the basic operations. Cash from investments is any return on investments we have made in our business, like we have purchased plant and machinery. So that is the cash flow, cash outflow to operations, to investment. And the third part would be the cash flow from financing. So this is the debt we raise from outside. So by having, it can be possible that operations. So you would have to know that just because you made cash during the operations, but because you got financing is reliable and you can get it over the years, then it may be a good option. But if you have a negative cash flow from operations and still you are making money, you should know that it may not be reliable source of funding for the future. I want to start with something.
So there is one more question. So they want to know about different kind of startup funding. Can you explain that? Like what kind of
sure.
funding they can go for?
So when I talk about funding, there are two types of funding: the people who will want ownership in your startup, and second, who will basically from whom you will borrow money, which you will have to pay later. So I first come to the point where people will want to invest in your business as the owner. So the first leg of investment is the angel investors. These are the people who start the startup. So if I want a startup, I may borrow money from my family or immediate friends, and they invest in my startup. These are angel investors, which invest in the startup even before it is formed or at the very early stages. Then as the startup grows, there are venture capitalist firms. These venture capitalist firms which invest in the startup at very early point. Like when they have grown and they have a proper business running, but still they are too early to make profits. Venture capitalists come at that point and they invest in your firm, in your entity for profits because they want ownership and share in profit and share in future profits. Then come private equity, which invests when the company, the entity is relatively mature and it has started earning profits. Then they come and they invest in your company as owners, and then they say we want share of the future profits. The second part would be the debt financing, basically when the people who give you money and they say we want it back at certain point. So they don't have a ownership in your profits. The only return they'll get is interest. So interest can be anything 6%, 9%, 8%, and you have to pay that amount at the end of certain period. But that is not a reliable source of funding rather than the ownership funding because you don't have to return that amount. You only have to give share in profit. In debt financing, you have to give interest and at some point pay back the entire amount as well. And for debt financing, it can be through any means. There are venture capitalists who only finance through debt. They don't want ownership in your company. They just give you debt and they say that you give us interest and pay back the amount at certain point. And obviously, the most common source of debt financing is the banks. You approach a bank, you present them with your financials, you give them your budgeted financials, and they will approve the loan based on their calculations. Yeah, so that is how a startup is funded maybe. And of course, then there is
Okay.
buyouts where other entity entirely buy out your operations. But that, and they may be, sometimes happen, they may only buy a portion of your equity. Like if I am a owner, they want 80% of the ownership. So that is also essentially funding because you have gotten like 5 times amounts you have invested. And yes, that is essentially startup funding.
So yeah, so again, I think this is already like you mentioned about this. So the question was like, would investors be interested to invest in an idea level startup? So
Uh, Idea level startup is basically a startup which has not yet formed. So these are the
yeah, I
easy
guess like
ways.
they have the idea, like they know what and all to do and all, but they haven't formed and so like kind of an angel investment maybe. So the
Yeah,
question
that is angel
that
investment. But my point is that angel investment is relatively difficult because see, 2 points. Suppose I have already a business and I am earning huge profits from it, and I want to start another business. So that would also be a startup. But since I was already earning profits, I can get the funding much more easily than I would at the initial stages of my career. Because when I approach a bank, they will see that yes, I have been earning profits, I have been earning income for the past 10 years, so I will be able to pay off my debt. But when I approach bank as a new person who hasn't had any business in prior years, I won't get funding. That's where the angel funding comes in, because you won't get loan from bank if you don't have any current business and you don't have exactly if you don't have any current business. But that's where angel funding comes in, and angel fund, and you can even have actually there are many investors who would be ready to invest in your idea, provided you have faith in your idea, and even if you have an idea, they would want the budgeted financial of that idea because they cannot just have a look at the idea and invest in it. They want to know how much revenue you need from that idea, how much cost would be involved in that idea. Because as I mentioned, those are finance people. They don't know the technical feasibility of the idea. They don't know the associated costs. They don't know the quantum of profit. They don't know the growth levels. That's the thing you people know. And it's your responsibility to convey that to the other people who are ready to invest in the ideas.
okay. So I have another doubt. Like for example, so this is actually like one of my friends. She wanted to start a company.
Yeah.
So about the registration actually, like so whether she is expecting a funding at a later point of time, maybe after 1 year or something like that.
Okay.
So like she has this doubt, like how the registration should be, like how she can approach, like whether she should go for a partnership firm and then like later maybe a private limited or something like that, or initially only like she should go with the private limited.
So, like, if you are expecting funds within a year, so that is a very short duration, and it won't make sense because see, if you form a partnership firm and then you form a company, you will have to transfer the business from the partnership firm to the company, and that is also not an easy process. So, I would suggest the easiest part would be you should start a company right now. But when you start a company, you should have the intent of carrying on with it. If she has the intent that yes, I'll carry on the business for a longer period, I won't just abandon the business, then it's a very good idea to start a business through a company. Because when it comes to company, the investment is so much easier than in other forms of entities.
Okay. So what about like see like is it easy to get bank loans for a partnership company?
So when you say partnership company, do you mean LLP or a private limited company or a partnership firm?
No, okay. No, LLP I'm talking about.
So as I mentioned, if we go by the difficulty in obtaining loan, most difficult is sole proprietorship, then partnership, then LLP, and then easiest is company.
Okay. So
And if you,
can you like continue.
yes, no, speak.
So yeah, so you mentioned about one-person company, right? Like,
Yeah.
can you tell like more about like how it will be like? So what is the like best advantage of one-person company? Like, in a simple way.
So as I earlier even mentioned, I don't recommend one-person company to anyone because in a one-person company, funds are not easy to raise as they are in private limited company. So I don't personally think that one-person company has any advantage over private limited company, except for the number of directors. Because in private limited company, you want minimum 2 directors, and in one-person company, you can have just one director. That's the only advantage. But when it comes to disadvantages, so we are having a startup, then we have the intent of getting it funded, right? So if we are
Yeah.
having a difficulty in funding of OPC over one-person company, and we know we can solve that problem by forming a private limited company, then it is obviously beneficial to form a private limited. And the best part is that the directors don't have to be active. Like you can have yourself as a director and any of your family members, and they won't have to do anything. You carry on the operations, and they would just be the director. They don't have to participate in the operations. So I would
Okay.
recommend go for private limited company only if you want to continue the business for the longer horizon.
Okay. So, guys, do you have any other questions? Like you can ask. Hey guys,
Yeah.
so any other questions?
Yeah. So if you have any other questions, you can message me or mail.
So there is one question now in the chat box. Can you please
Yes.
explain about the Kickstarter?
Sorry, I'm not aware about the concept. I'll have to look up. Can you please message?
Zain, can you just explain about that little further?
Kickstarter, right? Yeah, I don't have much information about Kickstarter, but if you can mail me the same, I will get back to you in a day or two and explain about it because I don't want that I give you vague explanation and I'm not also very clear about it.
Okay, fine. So I think like we can wind up, I guess, if
Yeah,
there
I
is no
think.
more question. Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks Shubham to take this webinar for our incubator. It was good. Soon, like we will be distributing this video in YouTube also. Like if anyone wants, please get back to me and for the YouTube link. So I think like most of us have the initial confusion whether to go which kind of registration, and also I think like today's webinar maybe like you will like you got some hint or idea about how to register and how to do these accountings and all in your company and all. So thanks, Shubham, once again, like for conducting this webinar. Like if we have any doubts and if we have like, so there are many student startups. They are like came out of our incubator program, and many of them want to register. And also, in case if they have any doubts or regarding the registration and everything, so we may like come to you for the help and all.
So
Okay.
you can reach out to me on my email ID or phone number anytime. I would be happy to help you out.
Sure, Shubham. Okay, thanks again, and thanks everyone for attending this webinar, and yeah.
Thank you so much for
I guess,
having me.
Yeah, Shubham. Okay. Thank you once again all. So I guess like we can wind up then. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Bye all.